What's up, everyone? It's Greg. I'm here, your host, and today I am interviewing Jordan Saniuk. I think I mispronounced his name again, unfortunately. But Jordan is a super cool dude. So he actually just sold a business with us, a business that he built from zero to hero in 12 months' time, and ended up exiting the business for like around $250,000, which we'll get into in the podcast, which I think is very inspirational. Like, we don't get to talk a lot about these people who build these like highly profitable side hustles in such a short period of time and exit. So this was a really fun interview for me personally. And Jordan has a lot of good wisdom to share with you, like whether you are building your own profitable side hustle or whether you're like trying to go to the moon and build the next like 8-figure powerhouse. A lot of what he said, I think, is very wise. Like, I have helped, like Empire Floaters, we've helped sell over 2,000 businesses at this point, and we have made multiple millionaires, dozens of millionaires at this point at the moment of their exit. And what he says translates even at the higher revenue levels, the higher revenue rungs of when to think about doing something, when do you think about exiting, when do you think about hiring, all that kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed this conversation with Jordan. I think you guys will too. So with that said, I'll stop talking and we'll get into it. I'll see you on the other side. All right, I got Jordan Saniuk. I probably should have asked you how to pronounce your last name, so I apologize if I mispronounced that. But welcome to the podcast, my friend. I'm super excited to hear about selling your first business. For everyone in my audience who is not familiar with you, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, thanks so much for having me. My name is Jordan Saniuk. I'm based out of beautiful British Columbia, the city of Vancouver, where I grew up and I currently call home.
Awesome. I actually just went to Vancouver a few, I guess like 2, 3 months ago. It was my wife's first time as well, and my first time too. Beautiful city. I had a blast getting lost in all the parks. So great. Maybe the weather's not so great right now, but it's a great city.
Were you able to
Great
get
weather
some
when we
nice
were there.
weather? Or
What's that?
were you able to get some nice weather? It's a
Oh
little,
yeah, it was absolutely gorgeous. It was July, which I'm assuming I'm from Alaska, so I'm assuming that's also your guys' best month. It's pretty
it
close to
is,
our
it
best month.
is.
Oh yeah. Well, it's awesome having you here, man. So I don't get to talk too often to entrepreneurs who do their like first exit on the podcast. So I think this is really cool. But before we get into that exit, which I'm sure is going to inspire a lot of our audience, talk to me a bit about how you fell into being an entrepreneur in the first place. Like, what's the story behind that?
Honestly, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. My dad is an entrepreneur. He's had his own business for over 40 years. And right away from the time I was a teenager, I was obsessed with the computer and I was making websites with WordPress from the time I could have been 12 or 13. One of the first sites I did over 2 decades ago, it was called that'sfamiliar.com. And basically the idea was that you could order things online that you could only get locally in other places. And the whole thing started because there was this cake that my mom and dad really liked in Winnipeg, but you couldn't get it in Vancouver. So I was thinking about this from a very young age.
That is cool, man. I feel like a lot of our breed of entrepreneurs are like that. Like, for me, I got super passionate into marketing because I had a TV in my room and just would stay up late and watch
Yes.
infomercials. Like, I was fascinated by like, how's this Billy Mays guy selling me all these crazy knives?
Yeah, I'd like to say there was some secret to it, but I was passionate and excited about it from day one, really. So
Yeah,
what,
yeah.
what can I say?
Talk to me a bit about the business you ended up selling with us. So maybe give the audience like a brief overview of what it was and some of your struggles as you went about growing it.
Sure. I think the best businesses start in a really organic way. It starts with a problem, there's a need. And I was actually selling real estate full time in Vancouver. And I had a listing in Dunbar, which is an expensive neighborhood here. And it was a tough time in the market. I was having trouble selling it. The client was a good friend of mine. So I was feeling the pressure and I was trying to think of other ways to market it. And this is what the business is and what it became. I made a list manually of realtors in the area that had recently sold a property or had a property listed. And I basically one by one just made a list of their emails, maybe 50 or 60 realtors. And I sent them a little campaign about the property, which resulted in a few showings, which was great. The property didn't end up selling from that, But I saw that it worked. And then I started thinking more about it and started doing that for other listings as well. And the business, Realtor Email Blast, is basically a way for realtors to connect with other realtors, by sharing new listings, developments, advertising their brokerage, price reductions, realtor bonuses, and that sort of thing.
I love that you just started with like, more or less a cold email strategy and just like start hitting
Yes.
people up. That's one of those things like do things that don't scale, right? And of course, it worked out well for you there. So, talk to me a bit about why email. Like, what was the difference between this business and say just seeing it on the MLS as I believe Canada has an MLS. Maybe I shouldn't assume,
Yeah,
but
they do. And it's very similar to the American MLS,
okay.
at least what I know of it. But I've always loved writing emails, and maybe some younger folks can relate to this, but not everyone likes texting or calling someone. It can be a little nerve-wracking, and I always just felt very comfortable reaching out to people by email. But email is a very interesting marketing medium to me. One of the reasons being it's not invasive. You can open it, you can not open it, you can click it, you can not click it, you can unsubscribe. And I don't like bothering people. And I really believe that if you're bothering, your potential customer, bothering someone you want to establish a relationship with, you're not really doing your job right. And that's one of the reasons I love email so much is it's kind of like it's the least invasive form of marketing, in my opinion, since it gives the person you're reaching out to so much control over their response and the action.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. I'm a big fan of email myself. Like, I look back on the people who influenced me the most in marketing, as far as like direct response, like sales letter writers, like back in the day when you're actually like snail mail, like you got
Yes.
one shot to like make this thing work, no tracking or anything like that.
The bottom line is it just works, and you
Right.
can spend time crafting your message, crafting the subject, tailoring it to the person receiving it. And yes, you have to send a lot to get the result you're looking for, but it does work. And, it obviously worked in this case.
Speaking of that, I want to get into how you built this email list because eventually you got to over 43,000 people, I believe, on your subscriber list. But before we do that,
Yes.
just so the audience knows a bit about what's to come. So you just recently sold your business with us. Would you mind sharing some of the like just list price or sales price, whatever you feel comfortable with, so the audience knows like you this started off like so grassroots to where it eventually grew for you?
Yeah, I mean, probably compared to some of the businesses you sold, it's relatively not, a life-changing amount. But one of the things I would say is that I started this business a year ago. I scaled it to over 500 clients and, 1,000 orders, I think, just in that year.
So you ended up starting a company where you're just like emailing these random realtors that eventually led to, a $250,000 exit, right? All within like a year, which is incredible. This
It's
is one of
pretty
the things that
incredible.
I love about entrepreneurships, about starting a business, the system of leverage, right? So now that we have like that groundwork, right? Let's get into how you built this. So how did you get up to that 43,000 subscribers? Like was it one by one, like painstakingly adding them to
Yes.
CRM, or what did you do there?
It's really quite interesting in other, at least Canadian entrepreneurs, because it's different than the US, can maybe take something from this. But Canada has really interesting anti spam regulations. It's
Mm,
actually one of the strictest, and the penalties are quite severe if you don't adhere to it. But if you actually read it, there's very interesting, I don't want to call it loopholes because it allows compliance, but there's interesting ways to comply. So basically, in Canada, you're allowed to email people in business if it's relevant to their business. The only thing to be aware of there is their email has to be publicly listed on their website for you to be able to do that. But the great thing about realtors is every realtor lists their email on their
right.
website. So basically, in the beginning, I was manually creating these lists by neighborhood based on sales data, based on listing data, one by one. And it was not a quick process in the beginning. I had help later, but basically just, gathering these names of realtors and then searching for an exact match for their email address online. Later, I would develop a Python script that did this automatically in Google, but in the beginning, it was all by hand.
So then the process would be, so you get the realtors' emails and you're emailing them to join your email list, like to become a customer of it, to where they can also promote their properties to other realtors in the area. Is that kind of like how the system is working, or walk me through that a little bit?
Sure. Well, when I was originally building the lists, and this kind of grew organically, but the original lists were just to advertise, properties, price reductions, developments. So, a realtor would hire us and we would send to the specific list I created based on their property. But that's one of the really neat things about the business and why it grew so quickly is as I was gathering these lists, I wasn't just gathering the subscriber base that, for the product I was selling. I was actually gathering the list of potential clients as well for the
Right.
business. So it was twofold. Every time I added a new realtor to the list, it was someone who could actually purchase an email blast, and it was someone who we could send an email blast to. So it was very easy to grow in that way. I did take time to create, obviously, but once it got going, it was exponential in that way.
Yeah, I bet that network effect is pretty wild. So you start off with manual and then you get to the Python script. Once that
Yes.
snowball starts going, like, I don't know if you know the numbers off the top of your head, but how much would you say was coming in, like the customers were converting from the Python list, or is it just like word of mouth, basically, the realtors like sharing, like that joined your list, like was part of the Python script, now like, hey, I want to become a customer now.
Yeah, once the list was more fully developed, the first month, that would have been in September, I would say, I think it was about 60 orders in that month. And again, that was no additional paid marketing. Actually, there was no paid marketing throughout the life of the business.
Amazing.
And it was mostly word of mouth. Once we were sending out these email blasts for other realtors would receive it and then say, "Hey, what's this?" But one of the main reasons actually is that every email, and I didn't like this idea at first, I found it to cheapen the product a little, but every email a realtor sent out would include a little ad at the bottom of the email saying powered by Realtor Email Blast, share your listings with thousands of realtors in Vancouver or wherever it was. And the vast majority of the business came from realtors receiving these emails on a regular basis, scrolling to see where it came from, clicking on that ad, and then ordering it for themselves. And that's, I took a lot of lessons from this business with me, but that's one of the main ones is, a product that sort of self advertises or self sells, or a product that you can use your own product to sell the product.
Right. That's a beautiful flywheel you built up there. That's awesome. It's like every new customer is like another free marketing blast for you in that sense, because all of them need it,
Exactly.
right? So
Exactly. Like if a realtor ordered a blast, they'd pay us, $150, and there were no costs on our end. That was the other great thing about the business. The costs were very low. Google Apps, Zoho, which we used to actually send the emails, but it was, 95% of that was profit. So realtor would pay us to send out their email campaign. We'd send it to, let's say, 3,000 realtors. But then that's 3,000 realtors who are seeing the ad at the bottom of
yeah.
the email who are new potential customers. So that's really why the organic growth, it seems easy once the snowball started going, but in the beginning, it wasn't like that.
Oh no. This is probably pushing a rock up a hill with like two broken legs when you first started with it, right? Like
Yeah, exactly. And, that's something else in marketing. Like once realtors saw other realtors who were well known in the industry, who were selling a lot using this, they think, oh, if that realtor did it, I want to do it as well. It was sort of social proof of concept.
right, right. I want in as well. There's a bit of FOMO, the friendly competition between realtors, all that good stuff working in your favor. So you mentioned
Exactly.
oh yeah, go ahead.
It's okay.
You mentioned Zoho, which kind of answered a question I had. Like, how were you like segmenting all this stuff? And was it just Vancouver, or did you expand outside of Vancouver too?
About 6 months after launching, I started to add Toronto, Calgary, and Montreal. There's huge potential, and this is one of the things when I listed the business that I wanted to highlight. There's huge potential to expand in every city and every area. The difficulty for me was that I was not as familiar with the areas, and it was harder for me to target the blasts more specifically and build out those lists because I'm very familiar with Vancouver real estate. So I would say Vancouver made up about 90% of the sales, and then Montreal, Calgary, and Toronto, the other 10%. But those were launched, 6 months after Vancouver was. And like I was saying before, that snowball takes a bit of time to get going.
I love these digitally native local businesses, which is almost what you have, right? It's like mostly in Vancouver, like a little bit outside,
Yes.
but like you're using all the tricks, all the tools of the trade to grow like something that is effectively a local for the majority. I was just telling another friend, he's moving from the UK, he's buying a USA visa, it's like some kind of business investment visa, and he's moving to this area in Florida and he loves real estate. Like, dude, just do like a newsletter inside of that city in Florida. And I bet there's almost no one doing it, especially not with your skills. You'd probably crush it, right? And all these opportunities that would open up to him. So I love this business. I think this is a really cool little business you built.
Exactly. And, it's one of the things I would touch on as well is lots of people want to start an online business and then, they think about how to market it, social media, obviously, paid online ads. But something really cool and different about an online business is, selling it offline. I still think there's no replacement for in-person networking, telling people about what you're doing in real life, getting them excited about it and having them tell other people that, real social proof of concept is much more powerful than, reposting someone's story on Instagram, in my opinion.
I agree. I go to a lot of conferences. I mean, we get tons of traffic to our site that I never interact with, right? But meeting people at conferences is often the biggest like unlock when you're like just networking,
Yes.
meeting people. Like, who knows who you might meet is a lot more serendipity involved, but it's definitely worth it.
It can really apply to any product online. If a realtor reposted a story about our email blast on their feed, and let's say 10 realtors saw it, that's great, of course. I'm not going to be upset about it. But if they told five realtors in real life, like, hey, I'm using this realtor email blast, I got results from my listing, you should try it, it's way more powerful. So I think when people start online businesses, they should not forget about that aspect, which is, yeah, you can be marketing it online, but you can still be selling it offline.
Yeah, 100%. I just had the host of the unofficial Shopify podcast on here a couple episodes ago. And one of the things he said for Shopify store owners, get out to the flea markets. Like, it is something that
Yes,
they don't think about because, I'm an online business, but like no one's there. This is like your customers. You can make so much money from. You can direct them from your stall to your Shopify store, right? And it's again those things that don't scale that can be so useful early on in the journey. Talk to me a bit about the challenges you face as you grew this. This is a young business. You built it and sold it within like a year. So talk to me a bit about some of the challenges you had and what you did to overcome them.
yeah, I mean, I would say because it happened so quickly, it is hard not to get overwhelmed. And, being an entrepreneur is tough. Just from, my own point of view, the consistency and discipline that's required, it's easy to get overwhelmed and you kind of take a look at the big picture and it's hard to focus on each little individual thing that needs to get done. But that's very important, of course. Honestly, I wanted to stop at at multiple times. As I alluded to before, I really stumbled into this business and it was lucky. Once I started sending more of these for myself, other realtors I worked with, colleagues, they wanted to do the same for their listings. I started doing it for them. My brother's actually a realtor and my dad is a realtor. So I sent email blasts for them and it just grew organically in that way because I saw realtors wanted to do this and realtors are not the most technologically competent group. So they need
Yes.
assistance with it. Some are, not all of them. But yeah, I would say just, the follow through, not giving up. Yeah, there was a lot of times it seemed more difficult than it needed to be. And it's hard not to get overwhelmed by it in the moment.
Yeah, I think overwhelm is probably one of the things that gets entrepreneurs the most because there's always more to do, right? It's like endless slush pile burning behind your back of just like countless to dos that literally never go away because like once you do that it's like okay, next stage of growth, right? So it's like the next step to do is come up.
And yeah, that's another takeaway I'd have from it is the email blast had a fast turnaround time. So normally within ordering, a lot of realtors wanted it out urgently, but we try to basically have a 72-hour turnaround time. Well, that's great because, they can order a lot. They're motivated to order, but also it's sort of this never-ending process where There's no off hours, and people are ordering at any time, and it's always urgent for the realtor. They have, an open house this weekend, or
Always.
they just did a price reduction, and the client's putting pressure on them. So it seemed like a kind of lifestyle business when I started it, but it really wasn't.
That actually brings me to another point here on the business. Was it just you the entire time up to the point of selling it as well? Just like one man show?
No, I mean, I hired for different aspects of the business, helping with the proofs, the actual designs of the email templates. At the busiest months, I think the busiest month was May. We were getting 8 to 10 orders a day.
Wow.
And I was very good at it because I had done so many. So, in theory, each campaign takes maybe 30 minutes to make. But then there's revisions with the realtors. They get feedback, they can adjust the proof. So, you're managing a lot of clients, doing a lot of proofs, and then getting them sent out. So, I did have help with it.
So you had like, I'm assuming like a designer contractor or maybe a VA of some sort. What was kind of like your team structure there?
Yeah, I was a little bit hesitant to outsource any of the work. And looking back, this is probably something I could have done better because I was very concerned about the quality of the campaigns. I wanted nice designs that converted well. So I actually hired locally people that I knew. And, people have probably had this experience before, but it's difficult working with friends, working with people close to you who you know already. Looking back, I probably should have just outsourced the design work and that sort of thing.
And you never know. I mean, outsourcing is its own can of worms, right? Hiring is a can of worms in of itself. So that's often a struggle in a budding entrepreneur. I mean, you were dealing with, you said 8 orders a day, and then you had a
Yes.
72-hour turnaround, like an extra 4 hours. I'm assuming you're still, a realtor during this time yourself.
Yeah, this was not the only thing I was doing. I was selling real estate at the same time. And I was working because, I'm an entrepreneur by blood. I was working on other projects as well. So,
The shiny object syndrome that all entrepreneurs fall victim to. Yes,
yeah,
always
that's
stuff to
been
do.
it's really been one of my biggest problems is I'll get very excited about a new idea and then I'll have to tell myself that's happening right now again. I have to tell myself, no, you have a good idea already that you're working on.
Put that
You
in the
can't do
brainstorming
anything
board.
else. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a guy I talked to. Do you know about the visionary, like visionary and implementer kind of archetypes? Have you heard of this?
No, I haven't. Oh, actually, yes, because for a job interview a long time ago, I had to do something related to that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I forget who popularized this term in the entrepreneur crowd, but yeah, visionary sees like the way things can be, what can happen, but they don't know how to lay the bricks on the road. And the visionary is always because he sees all this stuff, he just sees all the land like ready to go anywhere, right? Versus the implementer is like, hold on, like let's build the first road first, and then we can like do the other road, right? So entrepreneurs always want to hire the implementer because most entrepreneurs tend to be more vision than implement. So like
And I've
great at seeing
definitely
the
been
big
thinking
picture,
about
bad at
that.
painting. What's sorry?
Yeah, since this sale, I've been thinking it's very important to identify what you're good at and know where your weaknesses are and not try to spend all your time on your weaknesses, basically. And
Yes.
that's something
Yeah.
I can improve on next time because I was really trying to do it all. And there were areas that I didn't need to be doing. I didn't need to be doing the proofs. Yes, it's arguable that mine could have better than if I outsourced it, but it wasn't having a large impact on the client happiness and the actual results from the blast. So I should have just had someone else doing that. But some people, exactly like you said, are good with coming up with the business idea. Some people are good at taking a business and improving it. Some people are good at actually running the business. Whatever you are, focus on that and don't try to overextend yourself to do all these other things that you might not necessarily be the best at.
Oh, for sure, man. Like, there's a saying, like, if you focus on your strength, you get 10 times better. If you focus on trying to improve your weakness, you get like a 1% better. Like, there's a reason you're probably weak at it, right? So,
Yes.
so yeah, I'm with you there, man. But with that said, you hit it out of the park with this business. So I think that is awesome. Like less than a year old and already exiting it. This is huge. One thing I will say for your next venture, when you hire, I always say like if you hire someone and they're like 80% as good as you, like if you're the one doing the work and you're like trying to replace yourself, if they're 80% as good as you, like following your SOPs, usually that's success. Like it's very rare that they'll be up to the same level. Sometimes they're way better, like once they get the hang of it. But yeah, that's usually my
Well,
rule.
not to boast, but I think it's been one of the problems I've had actually is I haven't been able to find people it's hard to expect someone to be as excited as you about, your
your
baby
your
that
your
you've
business.
created.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, how can I expect someone else to be as excited about email blasts for realtors? Like, it's not, it doesn't necessarily sound interesting or exciting, but I love it and I created it. And, everyone says it's so important to work with good people. I've had trouble finding, I don't want to say good people, but just people who are as enthusiastic and as determined. Like, I'm the type of person who's going to, if there's a little bug on the site or something, I'm going to stay up all night, and spend 10 hours until it's fixed, even if somebody doesn't notice it. And that brings me some joy and relief, even if it's a little bit crazy. But it's very hard to find other people who want to do that for, I guess, somebody else's thing.
It is very hard. That is like probably one of the hardest things to find is someone who can like, you employ and they can really grow your business with that kind of zeal and passion. People say like no one ever will care about your business as much as I don't think that's totally true. I've definitely ran into like businesses we've sold, right? The employees were a lot more passionate about the business than the entrepreneur who was selling the business. He's like, get me out of this thing. So it doesn't always happen that way, but it is a general rule of thumb as well, for sure.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, I do want to get into, the end of this like year-long whirlwind journey of yours. What made you decide to sell the business? I mean, it was growing well. You were starting to get the processes and procedures in place. So talk to me a little bit about what was the calculus to make an exit?
I mean, it was a difficult decision. There's an opportunity cost associated with anything you're doing. And I have my flaws, obviously, but I'm pretty confident in my ability to start an online business and grow it because I've done it before and I know I can do it again. And it really comes down to, I created this business mostly by accident and it grew organically in the beginning and I threw myself into it, but it's not something that I had pictured myself doing for life or in the long term. I love emails, I love email marketing, but even from that point of view, and this might be a little controversial, but I'm starting to think that social media marketing and paid online ads and is kind of a dying breed, or at the very least, businesses are spending more and getting less results for their money. So I kind of wanted to take a step back from it and go back to basics and look at other traditional forms of marketing, but maybe with non-traditional twists, if that makes sense.
So you sum up the answer. So you decided to sell the business so you can explore doing even other like businesses you want to start, basically, to have that.
It's kind of like when we talked about people's strengths. I did a great job creating it and growing it to that point, but I honestly don't think I'm the right person to continue to run it. It's not that I was losing passion for it, I would say. I just naturally feel like I took it to where I could take it to,
That's
if that
important,
makes sense.
man. Oh, dude, it makes total sense. Yeah.
And I would say that to other entrepreneurs, like lots of people are going to give you advice. People gave me advice. A lot of people told me to, stick it out, that it had huge potential to scale, that it was making, at the time, I think it was making like $15,000 a month, which was all profit. And it seems crazy to walk away from this relatively easy business to run that's making good money. But I don't really think about those things. And I don't know, do you watch The Office?
I do. Yeah, I've seen it
Yeah,
before.
it's like Michael Scott in The Office when he gets fired from Dunder Mifflin and he starts the Michael Scott Paper Company. It doesn't really matter what business I'm doing. If it's not this one, it'll be another one. I'll start another company. I'll just do it over and over again. I'm not attached to the business itself. I'm attached to my role in it. Like, I see myself as the business. So it doesn't really matter if it's, email marketing or a car wash or whatever it is.
I love that mindset. So I don't know how often you listen to the podcast. I probably haven't said it in a while, but I think the one thing an entrepreneur can tell me when they're like going to go sell their business and they're asking me like questions, whenever I hear like, oh, I'm not ready to sell yet, there's more juice left for me to squeeze, which is such a common thing I hear. I like, to me, that's like, all right, you're telling me you're not going to get that $1 million exit, because I have so many friends that just hold on to like building up this business to where now they're incompetent on how to build it, right? How to take it further. Like I have a buddy, he had a $8 million business, and Google algorithm came and crushed him. I've told him for years to sell. He wasn't even into the business. Like It was pure lifestyle, just crazy super affiliate, very risky foundation because he wasn't going to take it any further. And that business is now worth less than like 300K at this point. No one's going to buy it. I know
Well,
you're
yeah,
like, well, I hope you got your squeeze worth.
that's really interesting because I had this exact thought, and I don't know if a lot of other entrepreneurs have thought this before. I thought, okay, if the business is making 15,000 a month right now, how much work is it going to be to take that to 30,000 a month? And I kind of mapped that out in my head. Then I thought, how much work would it be to start a new business and take it from 0 to 15? And if you look at your skill set and look at what you're good at, like we were talking about, for me, I think it would be way easier for me to start a new business and take it to 15,000 a month, just as an example, which has all sorts of different kinds of value compared to growing your existing business, in my opinion, than to scale. I do think that business is very scalable and has great potential. But for me, because I like starting new businesses, I love that creation and inception process. I thought it
And
would be
car
way
smell.
easier for me to start a new business, get it to 15,000 a month, than try to, double the revenue of that business.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like entrepreneurs were like a lot of the crowd is addicted to the word scale, right? Where they don't realize that like one of the like the number one way a business fails is it just doesn't make any money, right? You never get traction. But the number two way it fails is you get too much traction. You scale too fast, too quick without the balancing act of it, right? Like growth can be just as much of a killer as not making any money.
That's the other thing about email is you can only send so many emails to someone and they could unsubscribe eventually. So
Right.
you're sort of riding this fine line of like how many emails can you send a person in a day, in a week, making sure obviously it's targeted to them. That's actually something else which was really interesting is in the beginning I thought, oh, the more people you send to, the better. The happier the client is, the more chances there are of a response. But it actually turned out to be the complete opposite, which is you could send one email to 3,000 realtors, you could send one to 100 realtors. The one that you send to 100 might actually convert better. It's really based on the targeting. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how many you're sending to, it matters how you picked those realtors that you're sending to. And that applies to any type of email marketing campaign. So instead of trying to, obviously, if you have a newsletter business, then it's the more subscribers you have, the better. But I would say instead of thinking about, oh, how can I send to as many people as possible and how can I grow it? It's way better to be sending to a smaller amount, but that amount is more likely to actually convert or engage with what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%, man. There's a bunch of people that will like sponsor an influencer with say like, 1 million followers.
Yeah,
And they go sponsor one with 10,000. The conversions through the roof on the 10,000 one, and it's way cheaper.
exactly.
So it's just
That's what
targeting.
bugs me about social media. And like when I'm looking at these views, I'd way rather have, when I'm tracking metrics, an open on an email than a view on some social media story
Oh yeah.
because I don't know what these views are. Like I don't even see it as like brand exposure or building a brand because people are scrolling through their phones, scrolling through websites. Yeah, they viewed it. Okay. But did they even remember what the product was? Do they even have that kind of
Right.
image in their
Right.
head? At least with an email, like there's a slightly longer exposure time, or someone's taking a moment out of their day to actually check their email. I think it's very different taking a moment out of your day to check your social media, like to scroll through. You're in a
It's a
different
very
mindset.
different activity. Yeah. Yeah, 100%, dude. I want to get into like what has happened since, the M&A transaction, the exit you did. But before I do, you mentioned like liking to discover these other new things. So I want to send you on a rabbit hole. You go check it out. You let me know if you find it interesting. But I think with your love for email, you should definitely look at like direct mail. Like direct mail has a lot of opportunities in it, in my view. It's like the original inbox zero, and no one uses it anymore, but it converts so well when people do it well. Because again, like no one sends snail mail anymore, right? So it's like a big
That's
opportunity.
This is hilarious. That's my new company.
Is it? Ah, look at that. Hopefully we get to sell that one too.
It's called Post Off, and it's targeted direct mail campaigns for small businesses.
Beautiful. I love direct mail. I think it's the unsung hero.
The beautiful thing about direct mail is people take, first of all, it works just like email, but people take a moment out of their day to hold the message in their hands. The view is so much better than social media or anything online, and it converts. But also, exactly like what you said, I think there'll be a resurgence in direct mail because people aren't thinking about it. Like nobody's focusing on how to make really amazing direct mail campaigns. So there's a huge opportunity there.
Yeah.
You're going directly into someone's home, and it's actually less expensive than people think it is to send. I love direct mail, and I that's exactly what I was saying before. Like I'm focused on kind of traditional forms of marketing and media, but with a twist. I really believe that people are and are going to continue to get fed up and tired and overwhelmed by social media marketing and paid online ads. And it's already
Yeah.
happening.
Oh, it
I didn't make
is.
that
Like, yeah, you got like I don't think social media marketing is dying necessarily. But your other point is totally true. It's gotten much more competitive. Ad costs are much higher than they used to be, and you're like it's harder to stand out now. It's a marketplace full of noise, right? So yeah, that's so funny. You moved in direct mail. That's what
Yeah,
amazing.
so if a small business is, you have this local business, let's say it's a pet store and they're spending money on their social media marketing and, paid online ads, Google or whatever it is, it's likely they've thought about it in their head, but it's almost like why wouldn't they send, a direct mail out to the residents in their neighborhood, letting them know about the store or their latest product or latest offering, because it's so easy to do and you have all these people who live around your store that you don't really reach out to. I think people just got consumed and thrilled by the potential of social media and online ads, but then kind of forgot, the basics. And now they're looking
Yeah,
for other ways to advertise and connect.
yeah, the core fundamentals. Yeah, like nowadays when people get snail mail, it's almost like a gift, even if they know it's an ad. It's like, oh, this is so cool. No one sends me anything. Like, what is going on?
Well, there's a
So
huge
yeah,
opportunity with it as well. And I don't want to give away I don't know who's watching this, but like there's demographics that don't really look forward to getting mail, but they could if there's, and I'll keep this part to myself, but you can make getting the mail more fun again or more engaging if you actually spend some time. People spend so much time crafting their social media story or their post, but people get the same flyer from like Walmart or whatever it is here, Canadian Tire, over and over again without any real creativity.
yeah, I agree. A little bit of a twist, as you said. I won't ask you for your secrets, but I feel we're kindred spirits here. You're going from cold emails
I
to
love that you said that. It's so funny.
that's very cool. Moving back into the exit of your business, and by the way, I think you're really correct in like to sell this business. I mentioned the juice part, the juice worth the squeeze thing, but another thing is like I feel faster way to get richer isn't necessarily selling like a multiple seven figure business versus selling like multiple six figure businesses or even a low seven figure one. Like the ability to attain it is just so much easier in a lot of ways, especially if you are good, like what you are at 0 to 1. So talk to me a bit about since you've exited the business, like what has that kind of like changed in your thought process since you did this exit?
That's kind of a tough question. Nothing really.
I'm already that. No new insights.
I guess seeing it was possible was helpful to me. And it did, I don't want to be selling businesses all the time, but it did sort of spark this curiosity about, well, I find that part easy, like coming up with the idea, creating the business, and getting those initial customers. Like that part is fun and easy to me. And I have a good time until it scales to a certain point. So I have been thinking, like, hey, I could do that again. I could sell it again. And it's for me, it's going to be easier and easier each time. So I guess my mindset has changed a little bit there. And I also, with this new business and anything else I work on from day one, I have it clearer in my head that it could potentially be sold one day. Whereas when I started Realtor Email Blast, I wasn't thinking about the sale. And now if I look at what buyers are looking for and thinking about, it's much easier from day one building a new business to make it more desirable to be sold at a later date. So there are little things that I'm keeping in my mind when doing anything new.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. Since this is your first time selling, was there anything about the process that kind of surprised you, or did it feel kind of exactly how you thought it would kind of play out?
I would say that, if I was buying a business from someone, I would assume that someone was selling me some type of problem and I would be very hesitant. And this part I find really interesting because in sales, like I do believe that if someone's selling you something, they're selling some type of problem. The interesting thing is that their problem and your problem could be very different. And you tend to think that everybody has the same problems. Maybe they want to make more money, or they want something more fulfilling, like for their work, or they want to expand, or there could be anything. They're hungry. But just because two people have the same problem, like let's say the buyer, my buyer, for example, wants to make more money, and I also want to make more money. Just because we have the same problem, it could actually look very different. And I would say that I was kind of surprised by the problems that the buyers had and the solutions they saw to them versus the problems that I thought I had and the solutions I saw to them. Many of the problems that I found with the business, or that were a problem for me, were not a problem to a potential buyer. They actually could be a positive. So I'd say that surprised me, and it caused me to kind of take a step back and reflect on my own assumptions about the business. I said briefly before that I was hesitant to outsource the proofs because I was worried about the quality. So I hadn't outsourced the proofs, I was doing it myself. This was a problem for me, but to a buyer, that could actually be a positive. Like, oh, we can just outsource the proofs. Oh, the quality, it'll be pretty consistent. It's not a problem for the clients, and it optimizes all these things. So I try not to like get too wrapped up in your own head about the problems your business might have that might devalue it, because you really don't know what someone else's problem is.
This is a very wise thing you learned through the process. Early on in my career at EF, so I've been with EF for a little over 8 years. And when I first started meeting these entrepreneurs, mostly on the sell side, they would say things like, I can't believe these buyers, they're so stupid buying this business. They could just go build it themselves like me, right? Like, why spend all this money on it? And then later on in my career, I met these buyers like, I can't believe these sellers. They have no idea what they're selling. They don't see the opportunity. So it's like, they both want to make money. They both have the same thing that you just said, but they're approaching it from such different angles. So I've often told sellers, like, the thing that is your problems, like, a lot of times the sellers try to hide it. Like, no, my business is perfect. Like, no, you should be upfront about that, because your problems are often that buyer's opportunity. Like, that makes them want to buy it. Like, oh, good, he's not good at Facebook ads or whatever, right? So I'm with you there.
Well, and it's the same thing. We had no social media. And then I didn't want to include the blank social media profiles. Someone can see that as a huge opportunity. Like, oh, they haven't done social media. We can do social media, and we have this whole free, other marketing avenue. Someone else could be like, oh, they don't have a social media. Like, I don't,
Yeah,
it's,
100%. In hindsight, like, now that the deal is done, the M&A transactions closed, is there anything you would have done differently in terms of, like, either how you built the business or the procedure that you would have followed to package it to sell it better?
yes, I would have. I said this before, but in the beginning, I was trying to send to as many realtors as possible because I thought it looked good for the product and realtors wanted it. It's like, oh, if we're sending to 5,000 realtors, that's a better product and we'll pay more for that because we get more exposure. That's really not the case at all. Then you're sending too many emails as well. So if I was starting it over from day one, I'd say, each campaign gets sent to 500 realtors. Doesn't matter the number, but I would spend more time working on the targeting of those emails. So out of those 500 realtors, it's more likely that they have a buyer for the property. Basically, the less you can send, the better, but still get the result for the client. And then I would have also, when I did do this, I added a product called REB Momentum, which was basically a lead generating service for realtors where they'd get leads to their inbox. It got popular very quickly, but on a small scale. I think 20 people signed up in the first week. And I just wasn't in a place to scale that. Like, it was extremely time consuming. I
Mm.
was also doing class. I really would have needed to hire someone. But looking back, I have all these realtors visiting the site. I have all these thousands of realtors, going through the checkout, visiting the site, getting these emails. It's only natural that you'd have another product to sell to realtors. I wasn't selling another product. I should have been selling another product from day one. Like, it just makes sense that they could buy something else while they're buying the blast. And I did look into it and I did try different things. But in terms of, making the most money, like, you should have been selling something else.
Yeah, and multiple lines of revenue, right? That expansion is can be incredibly powerful if you do it right. Though you can, like, get into some hot water, like you mentioned, like, oh, the service like do not have enough time to fulfill on this, so you can run into that too. That's always a
Yeah.
challenge. But yeah.
And I mean, I just said that, but it is good to focus on your core product and the quality of the core product. And I had that thought, which is like, there's so much to be done still to improve the blast and the targeting of the blast and the quality of the lists, and it's very profitable. So I can focus my time and energy just on that core product and not expand to other products. It's hard to say.
For sure, man. Before we get into the rapid fire section here, where we wrap up the podcast, I do have another question for you. Like, you're a first time seller, you're going to build more businesses and hopefully sell more. For the entrepreneurs out there listening in, maybe they haven't sold their first business yet. What advice would you give them?
I mean, if they have a business already and they are considering selling it,
Yeah. What advice would you give them?
yeah, it's tough. I would actually say don't listen to anyone. Don't listen to me. Like, only you can know. And there's been lots of cases of this with big tech companies, startups, where they should have sold, they shouldn't have sold. Maybe they regret it, maybe they don't. Maybe they could have got more, maybe they could have grown it. Nobody knows. Nobody can know these things. I don't know if I could have sold it for more in a year, if, you know, sales would have declined. Lots of people will try to give you advice. Lots of people will think they know. I don't know why anyone would know your business better than you and also know what's right for you. Like, you're going to have some feeling one way or the other about if it's right and if it's what you want to do. Most people I told me not to sell it. They said, "Oh, you'd be crazy to sell it." But only I could feel this confidence that it doesn't matter if I sell it because I know that I can do it again. Like, that's a feeling that I have that someone else might find strange if they don't have that kind of confidence. Maybe it's warranted, the confidence, maybe it isn't, but I just felt really like, no, I know I can do it again and I will do it again. So it doesn't matter to let this one go.
I think that's a great mindset to have. Like, there's always the business reason, obviously, to sell to get more money, but then there's the often less talked about personal reasons, like, I want to do another thing and this thing is holding me back from it, or, whatever it might be, right? So I think that's an important formula.
That's a really great point because for me, when I work on something, it takes up a huge amount of mental energy. I think about it 24/7, and it's not really possible for me. I can multitask and I can do things at the same time, but like having the blast took up so much mental energy that I wasn't really able to pursue other things. And yeah, I mean, you have to know what's right for you.
Absolutely. Well, my friend, we are in the rapid fire section. So I am going to ask you three quick questions and you give me three quick answers. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right, no pressure, my friend. Let's do it. First one. In your view, what do you think is the best hidden growth opportunities right now in the online business world?
We talked about before offline.
Yes,
Uh,
the best thing online is offline.
Oh, if you start an online store, tell people who might be interested, get them excited about it, get them so excited that they're going to go tell other people. It's
Yeah,
honestly, it can result in such better growth and sales than creating a new Instagram and posting a story about the product. Like, go tell people, get out there, go to businesses, friends, network, just tell people what you're doing and do it with some excitement and enthusiasm.
love it. What tools or resources would you recommend someone to use to help them with their email marketing?
Yeah, there's so much time and energy put into trying to optimize emails. This was important for me. I would say focus inward. Like, with email, everybody has an email, everybody sends emails, everybody receives emails. Like, look at how you manage your own inbox. What do you click? Why do you click it? What do you unsubscribe from? What do you read? You're really just as good of a judge as anyone else about like what they like receiving, what converts well. So when you're writing an email or something, really think about, would you actually want to open this? Like, usually you're writing the email, tailoring it to someone else, trying to write something you think will get them to open it. But why don't you think, well, would I actually open this? Like, read your subject, not from their point of view, but from your own point of view. Like, is this something that, and often the answer is no. Like, I've wrote subjects for realtors who I think are really engaging and appealing, but then I took a step back and I'm like, am I engaged by this? No. It's just like, it's kind of like marketing. So if you wouldn't want to open it or you wouldn't want to read it or you don't think you'd click that link, then throw it out and start over.
All right, hardest question, and that was a good answer. Hardest question now. So this everything's writing on this answer, my friend.
Oh gosh.
What has been the funniest moment since you started working in the online world?
I don't know if I have one specific example. The funniest, but also the something that could drive you insane is, at least with realtors, They don't know how to email a lot of the time. So, like, I'll get emails at all times of the day, all times of night, basically emailing like they're texting. So they'll write the entire email in the subject line, they'll write it in all caps, they'll send 10 emails in a row with 2 words in each email. It's actually like when you get it, it's funny because you didn't even know that someone could do this, but it's kind of a good lesson because you can always assume that the other person on the other end of whatever you're doing, like really just has no idea what they're doing, especially when it comes to technology. Like you shouldn't assume any general level of competence with these things.
Yeah, 100%. My dad's actually a realtor and he's kind of like that. He owns his own like brokerage up in Alaska. And it's funny, in the late 90s, he was the most technologically like advanced realtor. He had like the first like PDF or PDA or whatever, like a digital like notepad thing you could have. This is like before phones even really.
Oh
Before
yeah,
I
my
well,
dad had the Palm Pilot, but I don't think
yeah,
he
so it
know
was like a
knew
Palm
how to use
Pilot.
it really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my dad just killed it, man. He became so successful, but then he never kept up with technology. So fast
Oh,
forward to like 2012, he has me going on eBay, finding this out of stock, no longer being made technology from the early 2000s. So he can just like transfer everything and get the battery because he's just like so like
yeah.
dedicated to this one thing. He had no idea how anything else worked anymore. So I could totally see that with the realtors.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm saying it now, but there's no judgment from me, and that's kind of one of the nice things about the business is you're fulfilling an obvious need because they don't need to be good at technology. Like they're out there day to day selling. They're in person, they're meeting clients, they're negotiating deals. Like they shouldn't have to know how to send the perfect email or
Right,
market
right.
their social media. That's why they have someone else to do it for them. But a lot of the emails were awful, and they keep me up at night.
I love it. Well, man, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's a it's a good look at someone like just going hard at something for a year and you're being able to exit the asset. I think that's a very inspirational story overall. So, if anyone wanted to follow up with you, pick your brain, or ask you a question, where's the best place where they can come and find you?
Yeah, I mean, you can check out my new website. It's postoff.ca, postoff.ca. Yeah, you could also email me, hello@postoff.ca.
Cool, man. Well, we'll put all those links in the show notes down below. And thank you so much for coming on, man. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'll talk to you soon.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it got you inspired at all the different things that are happening in this industry. And of course, if you just want to buy a highly profitable business, you can always go to empireflippers.com/marketplace, or maybe you want to make an exit of your highly profitable business, and you could go to empireflippers.com/sell your site. I've been your host, Greg. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review, give us a like, a follow, share it across social media. Talk to you all soon. See you on the next episode.